waking abruptly in the night, paralyzed, terrified, surrounded by alien creatures, abducted and taken where? A laboratory? Spaceship? Laid out on a table and probed, surgically embedded with implants. Is this reality, or is it a nightmare from beyond? Good evening, and welcome to From Beyond. I'm Joey Travolta. Tonight, an investigation into the growing phenomenon of alien abduction.
From out of nowhere, flying saucer mystery is with us.
Airline and Air Force pilots
The Air Force itself has officially admitted that flying saucers exist.
Is there another civilization somewhere in space? Are we under surveillance by an intelligence that has revealed itself to us only?
Hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Is life everywhere the same as us? Or are we just one example of a vast array of possible kinds of biochemistry?
The paradigm of science is not equipped to handle this.
Identified flying objects that you
believing in them is a matter of communicating with them. Very strange and unusual.
Economic reasons, political reasons, military reasons. It's not a scientific issue.
It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, but it's a puzzle that's worth exploring.
Our Earth has been observed by alien civilizations for at least the past 50 years. Throughout our history, each age in our development is characterized by an ignorance about the scope of possibilities not yet understood, that future generations may look back on with a sympathetic smile of condescension.
To us, in the 20th century Earth, this might seem magical, but I tell people to maintain some sense, if they can, please ask them to maintain some sense of humility. Because if you were to show this video camera, or a hologram, or a laser to someone only 300 Earth years ago, it would appear to be a magic. It would be considered supernatural.
Such is the case with UFOs. To us, they represent intangible illusions between fantasy and reality.
What happened to me first was at Christmas of 1985. I had a shocking close encounter that left me completely undone because it appeared to be an encounter with aliens. It was very violent and totally unexpected. Came into the middle of a life that was basically unrelated to the UFO phenomenon in any way.
I think that what the whole phenomenon is about is the manipulation of the human species for the purposes of alien resource taking, yeah. And that everything else we have is part of the control by which they keep this agenda within the realm of how they want it presented to us, what they want us to know and deal with, and what they don't want to is pretty much kept from us.
I asked them why were they gathering eggs and this, and they told me they were making a hybrid race.
And for what?
They didn't want, I wanted to know for what, but they never gave an inkling of what it was for, of what this hybrid race would be doing, where it would be, or what.
I spent months trying to understand what had happened to me from a medical standpoint, and eventually concluded that it was unexplained. I was very frightened by it and began to go out into the woods in the middle of the night to confront those fears. The result of this was that the visitors returned to my life, and that began what has turned out to be a 10-year relationship with them. During that period of time, so much has happened outside of my experience. along the lines of first the crop circles began to come, then things like the Mexican UFO videos began to be made, and now they're extracting implants from people. There's so much physical evidence of something strange going on that in 1986 I thought I had a medical problem. By 1989 I was fairly sure it was some kind of hallucinatory thing. Now, in 1996, if this isn't dead on real, I'll eat my hat. Only I have one question left. Who's doing this? Aliens or people? I don't know the answer yet.
It's almost like they are releasing information on a schedule. We're coming into our own awakening slowly and surely. And the information is being given to us on their schedule, not on our schedule. And one of the comments I made earlier was that a fallacy in some researchers' efforts is that they are trying to research superior researchers. They are trying to research superior intelligence. And I'm not sure that our human minds have the capacity to comprehend the motives, the objectives of the superior intelligence.
I am not content just to remember the experiences that I've been through. I really would like to have official public contact with these beings. I think that the time has come where we have to stop refusing to deal with it. We have to face the issue. We have to get them to come out of hiding, however it is that they hide from us and they get away with doing the things that they get away with. We need to deal with them on our terms. After all, this is our world. This is our planet. It's not theirs.
Disturbing stories of alien abduction are beginning to sound all too familiar. Missing time, bizarre medical experiments, post-traumatic stress. In America alone, over 1 million people now claim to have been abducted. Why is this happening? And why are so many affected? To investigate this alien abduction phenomenon, we have to look from beyond.
The UFO phenomenon has been a part of our lives for the past 50 years. With it comes the possibility that we may finally discover who we are and what we humans might accomplish in a vast cosmos, endowed with intelligence.
You know, the problem here is in a way, it's the messenger. Here I am, a historian at Temple University, or Bud's an artist at Bud Hopkins, and there's Mike Swords, who's at Western Michigan University, and various people saying these things, that this might be happening. Is, well, the fact that we are saying it automatically means it can't be happening, because the message is far too big for the messenger. If this were truly happening, we would not be the messengers. The President of the United States or Secretary General of the United Nations, they would be the messengers, and that would mean it wouldn't be happening. So no matter how much we say it, and no matter how much abductees say it, that automatically means it can't be happening.
An increasing amount of people worldwide are reporting abductions being conducted by alien beings aboard what we describe as UFOs. Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, among others, have been attempting to establish the reasons for what appears to be an extensive biogenetic experimentation being conducted by certain alien life forms currently visiting our planet.
We think that the abduction phenomenon began with the onset of the UFO phenomenon. In other words, we think that the abduction phenomenon probably began around the turn of the century and has been with us ever since. Our problem has been uncovering these cases. We have cases from the 30s and a few from the 20s. After that, our first-hand knowledge of it drops off pretty much. However, we feel that the abduction phenomenon, from stories about family members and grandparents and great-grandparents, that it probably does start with the UFO phenomenon around the turn of the century.
My grandfather died in 1940. So this was in the 1930s when these things were happening with them. She said they would be sitting on the side porch at night and they would see lights over the oil wells. And a lot of times they would see what they thought were little children dressed in white running around the oil wells. And on several times they saw it in the daytime. They would see these little children dressed in white. And once or twice they got up to go see if they could catch the little children and find out who they were, and they would start out, but by the time they would get there, the children would be gone.
We're not exactly totally and completely sure of what is going on with this phenomenon. What we do know is that we're looking at an alien agenda that is based on the physiological exploitation of one species by another species. In other words, people feel that sperm is being taken from them, eggs are being taken from them, babies are being implanted in them and then removed. All of this is for an agenda that is being kept essentially hidden from us. I look at this phenomenon with a certain amount of alarm. Other people feel that it's more benign than I might feel. But whatever it is being kept from us. I feel that if this were a phenomenon that were ultimately to help us, that we would probably know this, and that the abductors would have made this clear, but this is not what has happened actually. And so I'm really very, very disturbed about what I've seen.
The range of emotions that people ascribe to aliens it's very subjective, but anyway, what they feel is the emotional range of aliens is very, very narrow. They will sometimes feel that they're angry or that they're pleased. They will sometimes feel that they're actually surprised by what happens or impatient. But you don't get a really wide range of emotions. When people feel love radiating from them, which often happens, we really do think that's a controlling issue. I had a situation where a woman was in pain. She's on a table. There's various procedures that are being done to her. And she's very angry and she's hurting. And she gets more and more angry, and the head doctor, alien figure, approaches her, puts his hand on her forehead, and she just is filled with love. She has never felt. She loves him more than she loves her children. The love is total and complete and cosmic. And no pain, no anger, and he walks away, and she starts to hurt again. And she starts to get angry again, and he comes back, and he puts his hand on her, and she loves this figure beyond belief.
To me, they don't seem to understand emotions, because if they had, they would know that women just don't just have sex just to be, with no feelings. So no matter what they could have conjured up or shammed, it still felt like rape. And I don't think they have a concept of that.
No one has, that I know, has ever reported an alien losing it, so to speak, getting really furious, or no one's described them sitting around and laughing over some story. They all seem also to be very, very similar to one another and fascinated by our variety, the richness of humanity. I think they're fascinated by the richness of humanity, of the human spirit, really.
One of the most popular theories as to why alien beings might be coming here is that they are conducting reproductive experiments on abducted humans. Often these people recall medical procedures, which seem to be intended to create what researchers Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs refer to as hybrid beings.
The only conclusion that you can come to is that these experiences, although certainly real to the people to whom they happen, probably are not what they appear to be. There's something else. What that something else is, I don't think we know. I think human knowledge simply is too limited to address that question.
I know I've seen aliens. Okay, that I know. I know that I've had the marks on my body. That I know. So, in my mind, there is a connection. Now, I had marks on my body before I even knew about aliens. So, how could my mind be creating these marks on my body in connection with aliens when I had the marks even before I knew about the aliens?
Oh, absolutely. It's extremely real to them. And their testimony deserves to be respected and listened to. And their judgments And their feelings about what happened absolutely deserve a hearing. I mean, they were there. I wasn't.
Obviously, this program has a trajectory, has a point to it finally, and the hybrid seems to be the basic point.
The primary purpose of the phenomenon is, but not the ultimate goal, but the primary purpose of the phenomenon is the manufacture of sort of offspring from people, the production of offspring. This is a reproductively oriented phenomenon. That is to say, people say that they have sperm taken from them or eggs are taken from them. Women are then implanted with unusual embryos and fetuses, and then those fetuses are removed. People see these offspring as babies, toddlers, young children, teenagers, and adults as well. And we feel that the production of these offspring is really the focus of what this phenomenon is about. Now, the offspring look odd. They look like a combination of alien and human. Most abductees say they look like they're hybrids, for want of a better word. The hybrids have whites in their eyes. They have a mouth. They have a nose. They still speak telepathically, mostly. They look sort of human. Some look quite human. Some look more alien. But we know that this has been the focus of the program. This has been it, and people have been describing this from the beginning, or certain aspects of it. Even the Barney and Betty Hill case of 1961 had a reproductive aspect to it, both for Barney and for Betty. And this has been a constant since the beginning, and we feel that this is the reason for the abduction phenomenon, and it's the reason for the UFO phenomenon in general.
Their main concept was creating a hybrid breed. At least that's what they told me. That they were trying to create a race of people that could live in our atmosphere and in their atmosphere. And they had not yet produced that person. Now, on another occasion, I remembered being shown a baby that really favored my grandson a lot. If you would, give it the slant eyes, they weren't as big as their eyes, but it looked human. And I knew that this was my child, and I wanted to take that child with me, but they said that it would not be able to live in this atmosphere.
Now, I had a case maybe 5 or 6 years ago where a whole family had been having UFO experiences up on the Cape Cod. The little girl in the family was 5 years old, who was not afraid of the abduction experiences she was having. And children go up and down. For a while they think it's wonderful and fun, and then they're terrified of it and they change. Most people change too. But at any rate, she said that this little man came in and that she sees, but he had with him a little girl who didn't look human. She said didn't look like us and didn't look like him. Looked like a mix, and she had white hair, as this little girl described it, meaning very, very pale blonde hair. And the man said, we have to go, you have to come with us. We have some friends waiting. And she said, so we all three went out. We went right through the wall, Mommy, and you don't even get splinters. And you don't even get dirty. And they went to a playground on the Cape, and I think it was, I'm trying to remember the town, Harwich perhaps. But at any rate, she said they must have been playing baseball because all the lights were on. This is a playground with no lights. But at any rate, waiting for them were another group, another 9 little children. And she described them to her mother as, she said they were all twins. But she was upset because they didn't say hello to her, they didn't talk to her, and they didn't smile at her. But the basic point was that the alien figure told her he had brought her there to play on the swings and slides and teach the children how to play. They had to see how to play. And so she got on the swing and so forth, but she wanted the children to play with her, and he said, no, they have to watch you and learn how to play. Now, and then when all this was over, they took her back. But the basic point here is that suggests to me the ultimate desire to live amongst us. I don't know any other way to interpret that. And so it would seem to me, whether they're physically capable of doing that or not, perhaps some of them are and some of them are not, for various reasons of, God knows, nourishment, air, who knows. But it would seem that that's the goal. Now, whether that's a peaceful, natural process or not, no one knows.
If all the alleged abductees are crazy, how come there's so many of them? Why are their stories so hauntingly similar? Why do so many appear normal and have no history of hallucinations or mental illness?
First, I wanted to assume that I was crazy, right? But there was too much evidence to the contrary. For instance, I have scoop marks on my chin, and I don't remember how they got there, but other people remember aliens taking little instruments and scooping out pieces of skin. Hundreds of other abductees who don't know each other, who live in different parts of the world, who have not communicated with each other. It's like, I found out when I first started undergoing hypnotherapy, you know, I would tell John Carpenter what was happening to me. What I didn't know is that 47 other people who didn't know each other were telling John Carpenter the same thing.
Why are these people saying this now? You know, why in the 1990s and 80s are people thinking that it's okay to imagine that they had, you know, why not 1970s? Why not, you know, in other words, it's an interesting research question, and it is affecting many, many lives, and so we should be studying it. Now, it is true that psychologists, they are studying it to a certain extent, but I think that there has been in the past, and even today still, a stigma attached, you know, to maybe taking it seriously like that. And I could dream up many, many other areas of science where, in fact, the scientific establishment view just suppresses the chance to do research in areas, and of course ufology is a prime example of that, definitely.
What I always state about this phenomenon is that taken together, the collection of all of the photographs, the videotapes, the accounts that I've been mentioning, the ground traces, the physical marks on people's bodies, the descriptions of the events in the craft, and et cetera, the sightings, all of that constitutes an extraordinary phenomenon. And I think it is indisputable that an extraordinary phenomenon demands an extraordinary investigation.
To continue to dismiss the UFO phenomenon may very well be ignoring the most profound occurrences of our times. In our struggle to achieve technological dominance of the physical world, we have endangered not only ourselves, but countless other living forms. And in the process, we seem to have lost a profound sense of our place in the cosmos.
The paradigm of science is not equipped to handle this phenomenon. Sociological reasons, threat, denial, psychological reasons, economic reasons, political reasons, military reasons. It's not a scientific issue.
Well, there is no scientific formula for looking into this phenomenon. I mean, it is absolutely bizarre. I would never dare write a second book on the subject. I mean, if I'm going to have any credibility as a writer, this has got to be it. And I'm going to go off, and then I am. You know, as I said, I'm doing a book on the Mayo Clinic, which is hardly paranormal. But the abductees are what struck me. And because they came forward, as Mac had put it, so timidly, so reluctantly, so terrified of getting any publicity when they found out I was there for, in theory, the New Yorker. I never did it for the New Yorker, as it turned out. But I was media. They were like the feral cats I have in the back here. I would come and they would flee. So there was an enormous amount of time spent winning their trust, which is not true of somebody who wants to go on Oprah. You know, the last thing in the world these people want is publicity.
Those who have had encounters have to find some way to get up every morning and go about their day knowing that this is a reality. And one of the ways to do this is to make it benevolent, to make it scientific, to make it anything but threatening. And when we look at the real events going on and the real results of these events going on in the scenario, that is not a very tenable position to take. It is simply the one we choose for our comfort. rather than what intellectually, objectively we are observing, because that's too frightening. And that bothers me the most in ufological research, that no one is answering the big questions. Who are they? Where they come from is not even a big question, but why they're here and what they want are big questions. And we get caught up exploring the trivia of this phenomena rather than dealing with those questions. Nothing else is more important than those questions.
What's important to me is that I think people understand is that our planet is one that's filled with such fear. We have fear of everything. And this is a focal point for fear. When you're dealing with someone coming in through your walls and taking you out of your bedroom to a strange spacecraft and doing things to your body, it makes you want to go inside and to understand, what is this place? Who are we? Why are we here? What is this happening? Why do some people see the spaceship and others don't? I don't know why. I really think it has to do with us going inside and saying that there's something more going in here than what meets the eye. And we have to go inside ourselves to understand what's going on. There's a self-exploration here that opens one, that will open up one to other dimensions, other realities, and other possibilities. This place is not about money markets, picket fence, getting a car, and getting the best job. There's a lot more going on here than meets the eye.
Who are these abductors? What do they want? Why don't they reveal themselves openly?
Whitley Strieber said it years ago. He said, these beings are the true architects of the secrecy. They could break this open anytime they want to. They choose not to for whatever reason.
I do make some theoretical constructs to help me test and deal with the material, but I haven't yet to publish or to state a conclusion. I do not have a conclusion. I don't think anyone who has one right now should be believed or listened to, because there's still too much we haven't sorted through. But my take on it at this point, and this is personal but based on evidence from my case, my family's, and many, many other cases, is that we are a resource. We have long been a resource for these entities, that they not only take physically from us, they take emotionally and spiritually from us, and that it is not for our benefit. We are a resource for their benefit. And I think there's a change in the relationships in the last several years between the crop and the harvester, if you will, because the crop is developing new awarenesses.
The subject of UFOs is part of the subject matter of some courses that I teach.
Oh, good.
So it's got academic credibility in the community.
Yeah.
At least as far as I'm concerned, the evidence is really overwhelming that extraterrestrials are here. It's hard, after you see 5 weeks of that material, it's really hard not to have that opinion, I think.
There is enough evidence to make me believe it might be true. You know, missing time that does seem to be verified by other people. I'm not that impressed by scoop marks and scars, but I am impressed by people's reports of, waking up maybe with their underwear on backwards, things like that. Why am I, it sounds silly, why am I impressed by that? Because I don't know of any normal people for which that ever happens. I've never talked to anybody who was not an abductee who just said, spontaneously, I woke up and my pajamas were on backward. That just doesn't happen as far as I know.
The missing time experiences, well, one story which maybe should be, you can put on tape, but I mean, this is a kind of sadly funny story, and it comes from a psychologist who's been doing some very good work on this subject in Washington. But a man had come to him because of some experiences, but he began to remember an earlier thing where he had been in college at the time, and he and a couple of other guys had come to some town, I think for a football game or whatever, I've forgotten it. But they were staying in a Holiday Inn, and it was a hot night, and they were sitting around in their underwear watching television, drinking beer. And he stepped out on the balcony and felt real funny, and when he went to get back in, the door was locked, the glass. So he's banging, you know, and his curtain was drawn. Okay, come on, you guys, you know, this sort of thing. And finally, the curtains part, and there's this elderly man looking out. And he doesn't know what's going on, and the man's very frightened. There's a woman in bed, an older woman, background. And he doesn't know what's happening, and pretty soon a security guy is called by these folks, and they let him, security man lets him in, and he's now on the 6th floor, had been on the 12th floor balcony. And he's in his underwear going through some stranger's bedroom. This is a place where the balconies don't interconnect. And from that point on, he was called Spider-Man by his friends. But now, how do you have an experience like that and sundry other things and not begin to think there's something wrong? A lot of people just think these are normal.
Well, I know that it was physical, because if I did not get out of that car, where did I get all that dirt that was up to here on me? If I just stepped out of the car and looked up, because we were on pavement. So it's no way that I could have got that much dirt on me just standing outside a car on the street looking. And that's the first thing that let me know that it was real. And beside this knot, which might be, you know, you could say that it could be anything. The bruises are real. Nobody is beating me up in my sleep, because if anybody hit me that hard, I would wake up. And the places where I have the bruises, I couldn't give them to myself. And like I said, if I bumped into something that hard, I would certainly remember it. So it's real to me.
You know, about 2 out of every 3 abduction claims basically emerge under hypnosis. And so that, you know, that presents a set of problems. You know, then there's murky controversies about false memory, and so the abduction phenomenon. There are some cases that are really interesting and intriguing, but there are others that simply, you know, exist only in memory and testimony and seem unconnected with anything else. So I think that it's probably risky to, at this state, to go too far with this. I think that what we had better do is keep our minds open and our investigations busy and intense until we have more information.
I think there is a certain twilight zone of phenomena that, if confirmed, would really overthrow the entire materialistic worldview.
There's just a wealth of information, and I would challenge anybody to disprove that. You see, anyone who says there's no evidence to study has not looked. It's as simple as that.
You know, one of the great problems is simply our inability to trust our government. And it goes back to, well, it goes way back, but I'm thinking primarily during the Vietnam era and the Pentagon Papers, and that arrogance of governmental power that said, we shouldn't know this because it's going to upset us. That arrogance of those who led us like we were little children. Well, if there is something like this going on, are we going to panic? No. I mean, I don't think so. And depending on how paranoid one gets, one could say, in effect, there has been a very gradual preparation of our minds over the years through television, through film and whatnot, so that we're perfectly willing to accept.
There is no doubt in my mind that some branch of the government is deeply involved in this. And is deeply concerned.
It seems to me that they began monitoring, when they became aware of this, obviously they began monitoring abduction activity. I have one case in my new book, Taken, that goes back to 1954, where military sequestered an entire family on a farm for 4 days after they had had alien encounters on the farm. So we know they were doing it at least that far back. It seems to me that they worked very hard, scrambled very hard to try to duplicate the technology, not only the technology for craft and the technology of other sorts, but also the mind control technology. And I think they've done pretty well in catching up enough to do some terrible things with this technology. They may think they're doing it for national security purposes to glean information that's necessary, but I know to a person, if any government agency really involved in this wanted our information from any abductees, every one of them would be happy to offer it without being abducted, drugged, and threatened. We would give the information. They just don't want us to know they're taking it.
When I realized the military and government were abducting me to find out what the aliens were doing, and I resented that. One time, I was picked up and threatened at gunpoint by our military, and I was told that I must never talk about what was happening to me or they would kill me. This was back in 1991, and I believed them. You know, I'd never had anybody stick a gun to my head before and say, if you talk, we'll kill you. But that's not the only time that I was captured by the military. There have been other experiences in which I have remembered just little bits and pieces. I've remembered being in a military hospital and having an x-ray machine scan my body. I remembered being given drugs. I remember having my arms strapped down onto tables so that I couldn't move and being given injections. I remember them, military doctors doing something to my right ear, which I find this interesting too. Prior to that procedure, I heard Morse code type beeps in my right ear. After that procedure, I did not. However, after that procedure, I started hearing Morse code type beeps in my left ear, and I still hear those beeps in my left ear. Wherever I am, whenever it's quiet, I hear Morse code type beeps.
I mean, you take a person who has remembered alien experiences, under hypnosis, remembers an implant being put in their leg, they're x-rayed, the implant is seen, and then it's removed by a doctor, and that has happened. You can't tell me that's not real. It is real. The only question is, was the hypnosis accurate in the sense of who put it there? Certainly the lady remembered where it was under hypnosis. The x-ray confirmed its existence. But who did she remember under hypnosis who really put it there or not? We don't know, because we don't know the effect of the implants, and we don't know whether or not if you got past all of the interference, you wouldn't find soldiers putting it into her. Or it might be there really are aliens out there doing it. We just can't be sure of anything right now. This is a time not for answers, but for questions.
I mean, this is an example. I'm on an airplane. I mean, this is why these things come up. I'm on an airplane, and this woman's sitting next to me, and she starts talking, and this is a woman in her 40s, and, you know, bright. Actually, turns out has a very big job. She was the in charge of placement for a major law school. So she's dealing with, you know, Supreme Court judges and all this. And then she asked me, what are you doing? Is this business or pleasure? And finally out comes, I'm going to give a lecture. And I think, holy shit, now I'm in for it, you know. And she said, well, that's very interesting. She said, I don't know anything about that, but do you get ridiculed or anything? And I said, no, not really, you know, you'd be surprised. And she said, well, I had a very unusual experience once, but every time I told people about it, they, you know, ridiculed me. And she said, but, so I don't tell anybody anymore. And I said, well, what was your experience? And she said, well, I saw a ghost. Well, this is the experience very quickly. She's asleep with her boyfriend, visiting some people. There's a cemetery like a mile away, you know, that's the setting. She wakes up, she doesn't know why she wakes up, she can't move. She's paralyzed. And she's really scared because she doesn't know what's happened to her. Coming right through a closed door is a ball of light about this big, a perfect sphere. Comes about, you know, like 4 feet, 3 feet across the floor. Comes right over to her, scares the hell out of her. This is the ghost, incidentally. And it just goes from her feet, goes right up her body like it was looking at her, to her head, then it goes back down, and then it goes over to the boyfriend and goes up, you know, and blah, 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 and then out, and then leaves, and all of a sudden she can move. Now, this woman had no inkling that she is probably an abductee. How would you have an experience like that? A sphere of light that comes in. Interesting description of the light. It was incredibly bright, but it didn't illuminate the room. it seemed like the light was somehow magically self-contained, which everyone describes. People will say it looks like it should be hard on your eyes. It's so bright, but it doesn't seem to get outside itself. And the movement and the deliberateness of it and all that. She had some other stuff too. I didn't say anything, but there are people all over the place. I dealt with a woman recently. She's became a Pentecostal and religious and all this because she thought demons were after her. Woman whose elderly mother got the priest over to bless the house because of holy water, because the demons were coming through the walls at night sometimes. And so people just put these things someplace.
It's not really a frightening experience. It's just, it happens, and it doesn't leave you frightened. I think the thing that frightened me the most was that I was not consciously aware of what had happened, and I did not know what to put these ships with. I didn't have anything concrete to say, well, they're coming to do this or that. I just had the frightening feeling. And after I found out what had happened, I was at peace with what had happened, knowing that there's nothing that I can do about it, because I cannot stop them. Nobody can stop them from doing what they want to do. Nobody on this earth, because they are too far advanced mentally and technologically for, we don't have a defense at all.
It's like they do magic.
Yeah, they could come in today and take over if that was their desire. But like I said, I don't feel that it's their desire to take over through violence, and they don't care about governments. See, government control is not their thing. They want bodies, and they want minds that are going to do what they want the minds to do, but they need the bodies to do whatever it is with. And that's where we come in.
I think we're asking the right questions. And this has got to continue. I mean, if we let the curiosity, the anger and frustration that these people feel die out, then we're doing us all a disservice. Because we come back to the most important question. What if it is true? Then what are we doing about it?
We may not ever know the entire truth behind the alien abduction phenomenon, but one thing seems clear. Until things are taken seriously, it's not going to go away. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Thank you.